Welcome back to Who's in Your Cloud, 21 Steps to Secure, Reliable, Trusted Technology. I'm your host, as always, Lauren Lev, Marketing Manager for TechOnPurpose. And today we have an exciting first episode of the new year for you guys, episode 8 on Zero Trust. As you were hanging the mistletoe, cooking the turkey, and counting down the minutes until your in-laws left your house, we hope you caught up on episodes 1 through 7 of our series. If not, don't worry. You can do that now by visiting Tech on Purpose on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or Spotify. And why not give yourself a gift after you've been so generous during this holiday season by signing up for our blog at techonpurpose.net/blog for direct delivery to your inbox. I hope you all enjoyed your holidays, especially all of our Who's in Your Cloud contributing cast. And hopefully we're all ready to get back into this series and vital journey to secure, reliable, trusted technology. So in our last episode of 2021, we were joined, as always, by an all-star cast of cyber experts who helped us learn how to ensure a secure, private, and resilient connection for networks and user endpoints through DNS and web filtering tools. Today, we're focusing on the hottest new cyber buzzword, Zero Trust, and how it has become the new security standard to never trust and always verify. So let's jump right in and meet our cyber expert cast for today. We have VIP cast member who's quickly becoming the MVP of the VIPs as he continues to join us again and again, Jim Bowers, security architect from TBI. Hey, Jim.
So glad to be here. I'll tell you, I'll do all of these if I could, but thank you.
Oh,
glad
hey,
to be
I'll
here.
take you up on that. Don't worry.
Welcome back, Jim.
All right. And if you've caught our previous episodes, the next two cast members should look very familiar. We have Chase Doling, Principal Strategist from Jump Cloud, and Sid Castle, Channel Evangelist from LastPass. So Matt, again, we must really be doing something right to have all of these returners come back for more. So
absolutely,
kudos to us. All right. And please join me in welcoming Ryan Bowman from ThreatLocker. So happy to have you join us, and hopefully you have as much fun as these guys and join us on another episode.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. And hot off the holiday season with his Santa beard, we have Tech on Purpose founder and CEO, Matt Tankersley, everybody.
Thanks, Lauren. Welcome back, everyone.
Yeah.
Lauren, I think we missed Frank, who's our surprise guest for the day. Frank, thanks for joining us. We'll give you a chance to introduce yourself. You've been with us before. And Frank, of course, is from ConnectWise and a very important part of our security stack at Tech on Purpose.
All right. So, Matt, what do we have in store for our Zero Trust episode today?
Right. Happy New Year, everyone. Let me say that again. And guys, welcome back and thanks for joining us again. For those who are trying to be diligent about learning, how do I achieve secure, reliable, trusted technology? We created this series for that purpose. And so let's break it down now in the new year. And let's talk about zero trust. And Lauren, I joke often, at moments in the episode about now, but it's nice to have smarter folks in the room like everyone here. And today is zero exception. I'd be willing to bet that some of the listeners have never heard the term. And for those who have, maybe today, we can fill some gaps in understanding what is zero trust and how can you and should you be adopting zero trust to mitigate cyber risk, okay? And so I'll preface with, if you've spent any time Googling the topic, I know you've seen lots of results from companies that you probably recognize and perhaps some you've never heard of. I think that's good news, right? Because that should serve as solid validation that this is a real and it's an important topic that should be considered seriously by everyone. But is all zero trust created equal? Is the industry and the many solution providers like Microsoft, they're talking a lot about it, and everybody else on our cast today, are you guys playing from the same playbook? I mean, are we using the same definitions and do we even have the same goals? Hopefully today we're going to learn some of that. So let's dive in and learn some more, starting first with a brief introduction to our cast of companies that we have on deck. Lauren, who's up first?
As our surprise guest member today, Frank, I will have you go first. Introduce yourself and what you do at your company.
Sure, Lauren, thanks. My name is Frank Caprisco. I work at ConnectWise. I've been there for a couple of years. I've worked with a company of security consultants prior to ConnectWise. We were acquired and we formed, as part of IT Nation, what we call the IT Nation Secure Team. And it's our responsibility to manage the delivery of cybersecurity education, our certified programs. We created the MSP Plus Cybersecurity Framework just for MSPs. And then we also host the IT Nation Secure Conference. And this year, I believe the theme is going to be Zero Trust. So this fits in really well.
We're going to take it over to Jim. Jim, you know how this goes. As the VIP cast member, take the floor and tell us one more time about your role at TBI.
Absolutely. So I'm Jim Bowers, security architect at TBI. TBI is a technology distribution organization that enables our 2,000 plus partners to provide solutions to their client base. I'm part of the engineering team at TBI, resources for our partners, and I'm the cybersecurity arm of that team. But glad to be here. I love doing this video blog. It's awesome.
We always love having you on. So thanks for joining us again and again. As our newest cast member, we'll have you up next, Ryan. Tell us more about yourself and ThreatLocker.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad to be here with you guys today and join in these sessions. So I actually spent most of my career as an MSP, servicing small business clients, and more recently, joined ThreatLocker and focusing here on cybersecurity. So I'm the director of solutions engineering. So our solutions engineering team is very involved in getting our partners trained, making sure proper implementation is taking place to get those environments secured, all the way on through the onboarding and post, kind of post support, making sure that things are going the way that they should. Of course, ThreatLocker looking at the endpoint piece of the security, the layer that we're focusing on.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. We appreciate you being here. Sid, let's take it over to you. I like your new background. It's different for today.
Thank you. I change it up fairly often.
Good.
Again, appreciate you having me on board. Sid Castle, LastPass evangelist over here at LogMeIn. And LastPass is all about identity access management. And while I trust everyone here on the call, I don't trust anybody else. And that's what we're all about. And, zero trust, zero knowledge base. And we'll definitely go into more detail about all that today. But thanks, Matt. Thanks, Lauren.
All right, Chase, you're last. Tell us what your role is at JumpCloud.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks again. So I'm a principal strategist here at JumpCloud, very similar to Sid in kind of an evangelism role, but really kind of crafting our story and kind of how we take that into market. But within JumpCloud, we are a cloud directory platform. And so within that, we're managing users, we're managing access into different applications, we're managing and securing devices and networks, and all of those different components kind of lead down this path of what we're talking about today, and kind of how we think about conditional access, zero trust, and all the different pieces in between.
All right, everyone. That was a good warm up. Matt, we'll take it over to you. Kick us off for our first roundtable hot topic for 2022.
I'm just going to fly from the hip today, guys. That tends to work sometimes well better than the script. And I will say, I got a chuckle last time we discussed zero trust. It was right after the Channel Partners Conference, and somehow the word zero trust came up, and Sid was real quick to point out that that's not what his wife had for him when he was in Vegas. It wasn't zero trust.
Exactly.
I had a lot of fun with that one. Yeah. So, guys, a typical format here. We just want to kick it around the room really quickly. We want to respect everybody's time today and make sure we get through both rounds. We want to hear everybody say, what's your company's take on what is zero trust and why is it important? And then we'll talk in our second round of questions about what your company specifically is doing in this space. And so, Lauren, I'd say you tell us who's going to go first, and let's start breaking down what is zero trust and why is it important.
All right, Jim, we'll have you up first. Take it away.
All right, you always put the pressure on me up first, but
well, you're the most experienced. You have
right.
to go first.
Well, being at TBI, I had the pleasure in my role, to work with such great vendors like we have on this call. So if you look at zero trust at its most fundamental aspect, it really is exactly what it's saying, right? It's an architecture based on the principle that nothing can be trusted. And take that a little further, that means that no device, user or application attempting to interact with any portion within your infrastructure, your data, your application, anybody can be considered secure. So when you take it from that method, if you look how organizations historically have done security, it's all about protecting the perimeter of the network. Well, the problem of that is that perimeter is eroding. And the problem of that is that perimeter is changing. And the problem of that is threat actors are going to get around your perimeter defenses, right? So I think we talked on a previous episode, the weakest link to all of this is the human. So we have to anticipate in a cybersecurity posture, how can I know that human's going to click on the link if I train them? How am I going to provide richer capabilities around when they do that? And that's really the principle behind zero trust is I don't care who you are, what device, I'm not going to trust you no matter every time you come in, because inherently organizations, once that user was trusted, they could go anywhere within the organization. And that's not a good thing. So that's really how you see organizations adopting this zero trust architectural methodology because of what we're going through, perimeter eroding, and being able to provide that layer of defense and not trust anybody. So I'll stop there because I will keep talking.
All right, Ryan, no pressure to follow that, but we will have you up next. So explain to our audience, what is zero trust and what's the risk that necessitates it?
Yeah, that was a great intro, Jim, and you hit a lot of different areas there. And maybe just to add to that from a risk standpoint is, that's been the traditional approach, right? What is the next risk that's going to get us, and how do we stop and how do we prevent and protect against that risk? Well, I certainly don't want to be the one who has to create a list of all the risks that are out there, because I can't even type that fast as quickly as new risks are coming about. Every day there are new methods of attack that we read about, and we just can't keep up with that. But when you think about the zero trust, is why do we have to trust all of those things that our users are going to do? Users are going to click things. They're going to open things that people send to them, not because they're inherently malicious or they're trying to be malicious, but it's just they think they're doing what they're supposed to do. And we're never going to be able to identify all of those things. There's just too many. So with that zero trust concept, just building what Jim said, is we just need to figure out what our users actually need to do in order to carry out their job. And let's make sure they can do those things as they need to, but let's not let them do anything else. If they need to do something new, that new thing isn't trusted until somebody can validate it and give it the stamp of approval and decide that we are going to trust that. So it's just kind of flipping that script of saying, instead of trusting and then trying to verify, which is really hard, let's just not trust until that is validated for sure and given that stamp of approval.
Yeah, Sid, I see you shaking your head in approval, so you can go next.
Well, thank you. I like what Jim was saying earlier about the users and what they do. And that's obviously, we'll play on the word, the do that they step into. And as you heard Ryan said, we have to allow them to do what they're going to do within their organization. And we need to understand what we can trust and what we can't. We view it at LogMeIn and LastPass as that everything needs to be protected as though it's already exposed, that it's already out there and people are seeing it. So everything about us is a component of zero trust. We're more on the zero knowledge, that we're wanting to keep this data and authenticate it, make sure that it's not used or stolen, and that we make sure that we can verify if it's compromised, but then also authenticate that you are who you are with our various tools. So that's the aspect of zero knowledge and zero trust that we work off of. But it partners very well with a lot of the other products you're going to hear and see. And that's the thing that you'll hear about this Who's in Your Cloud and everything that Matt and Lauren are talking about, is that this is something that has to be worked together. These solutions will do things for you, but everything together will be what will protect your organization and help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a layered approach. Can't have one without the others. Yeah. All right, perfect. Frank, we'll have you go next.
Sure. And the way we or I look at zero trust is, as a compliance person in my background that I've had for so long, it's always been about least privilege. and it's so hard to implement. It has been so hard in the past to implement, and getting companies to understand it and build their products that way has been so difficult. So now that there's a focus on the application and person access that can be done through products, it's easier for companies to develop software products using other tools to help ensure that the people that have access to do their work can do what they need to, but nothing else.
All right, Chase, will you close out our first round table topic today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think usually what I like to do is just through analogies, right? And so kind of thinking about the movement from trust but verify, and then to kind of verify every step. And so I think a trust but verify is you walk into the door and say, hey, you look nice, right? You check that ID, but then you have a great rest of the evening. The comparable to that is kind of almost like go to the airport, right? And so at each intersection, you're constantly verifying your identity, right? And you kind of show up, you check your bag, and you get through security, and then again at a gate agent, and then, you know, again, if you make it into the bar there, right? And so, but each step of the way, you're constantly verifying yourself and kind of the access to everything that you need. And that's kind of also how we think about within JumpCloud is we're managing all the users' identities, but then also kind of what access to applications they have, their infrastructure, whether that's devices or networks or other pieces. And so instead of, you know, I'd say showing your boarding pass, right? We're enabling push MFA. We're enabling other challenges of authentication across that path. And then within that, we lay down, I'd say we focus a lot on, I'd say the conditional aspects of that. Like, what are the conditions where you want to make sure that happens? Like, well, you're out of the office, right? So there's going to be more challenges. You're coming from this IP, you're coming from an unknown device, all of these different elements that we're able to combine into that authentication journey, right? And so, because we want to make sure that you can authenticate into all those things, but then to Frank's point, that you're authorized to access those things as well, right? And so kind of making sure that you have the balance of both.
Matt, before we go on to round two, do you have any closing remarks on Zero Trust?
You know, the thoughts that I had while we were just talking is, you know, what are the productivity impacts, right, of least privilege and Zero Trust? And a lot of people listening might say really quickly, man, this makes a lot of sense, you know, statistically speaking and everything, but I can't afford to have my workforce productively impacted this way. And the reality is you got to stop and ask, what's the cost of not doing it? What's the cost of having an intentional or unintentional trust compromise that has every system in your environment locked down due to ransomware or something like that? And so I think the reality is it's just not an option. So let's take the rest of our time, continue to pass the baton around. Let's focus on how each of your organizations is going to battle with Zero Trust and disarming the risk associated with the inherent or default trust of users, devices, data, applications, privilege, and storage. What else needs to be part of this conversation? And Lauren, I'll follow your lead on who we think goes next.
Perfect. All right, Sid, talk about the inherent risk and LastPass's solution to Zero Trust.
Thanks again, Lauren. Obviously, the data is the big risk here, and you know, data is the new currency. So, what can happen to this information? So we need to make sure that nothing personal is stored, that none of the endpoints are compromised. You know, how do we go between these different locations and different technologies? So as you'd heard, MFAs are incredible tools to verify you are who you are, that you're logging in from where you're supposed to be. So these different pieces, but LastPass with that identity access management is all about protecting that data and those users and making sure that even if we were compromised in some way or form, that nothing was lost that could be used against somebody else.
Frank, you're up next.
Yeah, so as part of ConnectWise's security as our top priority for this year, we've started to implement a philosophy of Zero Trust ourselves. So while we don't have a product specific to Zero Trust, we're implementing products to make sure that our colleagues in our infrastructure remain secure from cybersecurity attacks. So we actually today at 11 o'clock, we actually rolled out the first phase. And so with a company our size and a lot of other companies, there's so many applications and it can be such a big thing that we're doing it as a phased approach with a couple offices, and we're just doing 18 applications to get started. And so I think it's important to make sure you understand how many resources you're going to need and what the scope of the project is before you get started and have a good plan. That way you can implement it and make sure you're not taking away privileged access or hurting productivity. So we're kind of doing a phased approach, and we just started today. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes tomorrow.
All right, perfect. Okay, so we'll go to Chase next.
Perfect. I think there's a lot that we think about in terms of jump cloud, because I'd say the other piece of it is layers, right? Layers of authentication as you go through it. And so I guess we'll kind of give you an example of a day in the life, right? So as I logged into my machine today, it's protected with push MFA. So I have that kind of get into my device, but then now I'm coming from a secure device because I also have a certificate on that, right? And so, okay, great. And then I can actually log into my jump cloud single sign-on. And that is specifically designed because I'm part of a group within our organization. So I have access to all the applications that I need, but then all the other ones that I don't, right? And so if I was coming in from an engineering perspective, to kind of use that example, maybe I can get all the way into my AWS environment, but I can only access certain areas of it, right? I'm not part of the DevOps team, so I can't, have visibility into that infrastructure. So it's even thinking about the granularity of when you want that to happen, and then also upping the ante when you want to, right? And so I think there's, one of the pieces that we have around zero trust and everything else is kind of that thin edge that you walk between how much is too much security, where you're frustrating all your users all the time, but then what are all the background components that you can rely on, everyone within this call to kind of make that a seamless experience, right? So that whole login experience, right? I had to do a couple things, but I was checked at each point kind of on behalf of the infrastructure behind that. And so that's a lot about how we think about enabling a lot of small, medium organizations to go around that. And so if you think about even the history of zero trust and kind of how it came about, another good example of this is Google with their BeyondCorp kind of implementation. The impetus of that was like, how can we access stuff without a VPN? And now the reality is a lot of organizations can get there, right? Jump Cloud included, because if you're using, certificate based and you're already able to authenticate the user a couple different ways, then you're able to kind of, you don't really need a VPN anymore to kind of get access to those pieces. So it's that ability to kind of make that secure path, but really seamless, make sure that you're not frustrating folks along the way, right? Because to points earlier, right, users are going to be all over the place. So if you can guide that path for them, that's really helpful.
Lauren, it's interesting. We work with ConnectWise every day, and we have for a long time. We work with LastPass for a long time, and we have every day. And each one of these plays a role. And if you follow our episodes and why we've developed a layered approach to Top Cybersecurity 1 and Top Cyber 21, right? And so identity and access management, which Jump Cloud plays a significant role in, and inventory of your risk assets, right? Big part that Automate and ConnectWise does for us. But if you've been listening to us, you know that Jump Cloud and ThreatLocker are two of my favorite new folks on the block. And I don't know if it's fair to call you new or not, guys, but you're new to us and we love it. And I'm actually at a customer site in Dallas right now, and I've got MacBooks all around me. And guess what I'm doing with these things? I'm getting Jump Cloud on them. And once I'm done with that, we're going to be talking about a little bit about ThreatLocker once we get that Mac agent going out there, right? But we're really excited about both of you guys. Thank you for being here. And I'm anxious, Ryan, for you to share with the team what ThreatLocker is doing, because it definitely makes our propeller spin.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got that Mac agent on the way, Matt. I told you I'm in the ThreatLocker office, and a lot of chatter going on about that. So it's getting closer to reality. So keep your eyes open for that. But ThreatLocker does focus on the endpoint itself. I mentioned earlier about our users are just going to do things because they just think they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're going to open those files that they look like it's a PDF invoice that they're supposed to pay, but it turns out to have been a ransomware file that they ran. And with ThreatLocker, we're not going to let those things run because we're just going to identify the applications that you need. Do you need to run Microsoft Office? Yeah, probably. We're going to let that run just fine. But when something new comes along that you've never used before, we're not going to trust it. That's the zero trust. We don't trust it. And so we're going to block it. And we're going to allow somebody on the TechOnPurpose team to look at that thing that you just tried to do and make sure that that's something that you should be allowed to run. And if it is, very easy for them to add that to the trusted list so that you can then use that application. But everything that hasn't previously been identified simply isn't going to be allowed to run. Now, the number one thing, of course, is we're trying to stop those ransomware and other very obvious malicious files from being able to run. That's huge. But the other piece that people don't think about are applications that some people might trust that can still be used for harmful purposes. And I'll just take the example of a remote access tool. I mean, we've all heard about the fake Microsoft tech support calls, right? They call people, I'm from Microsoft, you've got a computer problem, I'm here to help you. Why don't you just launch this remote access tool and give me access to your computer so I can help you? Well, TechOnPurpose, I'm sure, uses a remote access tool, but probably only one, maybe two if they have a backup. There's what, 10, 15, 20 options that people could use. If they try to get your user to use one of those tools that isn't already on the list, it's not going to work. And then they're going to call TechOnPurpose and say, let me run this, and you'll soon figure out they're talking to the wrong people. So it's not only the bad, the known bad, which is certainly a big piece of it, it's also the unnecessary, the applications that might be trusted to some, but aren't needed in that environment, which prevents them from then being able to do harm. And I know we don't have a lot of time here, but data access, somebody mentioned earlier. The second piece is, once your application can run, what is it that it can do in your environment? Again, Office needs to connect to your network shares and get access to your Word and Excel documents. It needs to do that. There are a lot of other applications that you run on your computer that don't have any reason to ever do that. They don't need that data in order to serve their function. So don't give them access to that data. In the event that that application has a vulnerability at some point down the road, that application can't be used to get to that data because it never needed that data in the first place. So control what can run. If it's not needed, don't let it run. And then if you're going to let it run, keep it in its lane. Let that application do what it needs to do. Don't let it do anymore.
Well, but I know we're going to give Jim some last words on yeah, buddy, I got you.
You know, I'm confident in the bed.
Yeah, I didn't say, yeah, I know you are. So don't lose it. Don't let me make you lose your track. I didn't say this earlier about Jump Cloud. One of the things we love there is very similar to what ThreatLocker is doing, right? We can say, hey, you can only access these apps on these devices. And, I could hand you my credential and my username, and you could go anywhere in the world without these technologies, and you could log in, you could steal all my emails and all my contact information. But, Jump Cloud does an amazing job of that. We've worked with similar solutions like Google Context Aware technology that says, hey, man, if that device isn't approved inside of the console, we're not going to let you in. I think, Jim, let me set the stage for you on closing. We've said this many times. There's no silver bullet to any of the top Cyber 21 or cybersecurity in general. It is absolutely a layered approach. Hopefully you've heard that over and over and over. In this case, I think it's safe to say, guys, zero trust is a methodology. And we can adopt the zero trust methodology with what devices we're using and where we're using those devices and what networks connecting and what credential we're using, where I can use that credential and where I can't, what role MFA plays. I love what ThreatLocker does with the endpoint. We talked in EDR last week, right? I think it was last week we talked, maybe a couple episodes ago, about EDR. There's all the things we know, and then there's what we don't know. And what I love about ThreatLocker is they're cutting it off at the pass, talking about things that we don't know. And we're going to assume if we don't know it, it's not authorized. Zero trust, guys, it's a methodology. It's an imperative. It involves all of these different layers. And we love our solution set from all of our vendors. And so we can't do all that without our great friends from TBI and our VIP cast that help us with distribution and procurement and being smarter than we actually are. So, Jim, what are your thoughts on how your team approaches zero trust, man?
Yeah, so first of all, dude, great group of cast members, dude. This is one of the best ones I've done. Great intellect here. But another thing, I love the 21 steps to secure, reliable technology, right? And I can't stress that enough, because that's the roadmap for all, not just your clients, but everybody should take. Because I'm Italian, and I'm going to tell you one thing: if you take any layers out of that lasagna, it's not lasagna. I'm telling you, it's not lasagna. So
that's right.
In that instance, when you take these layers out, your security is not where it needs to be, right? So my take on it is, like you said, I have this great job to work with vendors like these guys that are changing and pushing and enabling organizations to meet this next generation of how they're going to do business, right? And I love Ryan said it. I like to call endpoint starting points. He's focusing on that endpoint. That's where threat actors are going to go. That's a critical component into this, right? We're focusing on SID solution, focuses on that end user. We're not going to trust them, right? And you talk about that zero trust, and I love how Chase used that analogy. I like to look at it as a hotel, right? I have my key card. I walk in the hotel. With that key card, I may be able to go to the front desk. I may be able to get some snacks. I may be able to go to the conference room. But if I don't have a room there, I can't get up to my room. Or now I can't get in the elevator to the floor in the room. And that's what zero trust in all intents and purposes is. I'm going to enable you to do your job function, but I'm going to limit you to only that, right? And there's pieces, and these vendors fill those layers in the zero trust, as well as the layers into your 21 steps. So that's what is awesome about this type of format. That's what zero trust is, in my opinion, and that's why you're having these series, to enable our clients to see what it takes to have that layered approach to security.
Well, Lauren, we've been really efficient with our time today. I think we actually ended up faster than we intended. And so I say, if anybody's got any final words they want to throw in on zero trust, you're obviously going to close us out, tell people how to get free demos for all of these technologies and trials through TechOnPurpose, of course. That's the goal. But any final words? And let me kick us off Hollywood Squares. Chase, I see you up in the top left. Any last thoughts for listeners that are trying to grasp what's zero trust, man?
I was actually just going to just try to plus one, Jim. I think one of the biggest pieces that we talk about is you can't buy it, right? It's not like, all right, great, I got some zero trust, so we jumped in and done the thing. It's a methodology, it's an approach, and one of the other pieces too that's really interesting when we talk to our customers about is it forces them to think about what are all those conditional access points, like who should have access to what, right? And that's actually a new exercise that a lot of companies have yet to go through, right? Kind of like what apps, what users, where should they be? And it's a great thing to think about, because then you internalize all of those, we're just the software that helps you, provide that, right? But it comes back into like, what's the best process? What's the best layer for your organization as you go through this and build out, security and what it means to you. And so that's the other piece that I love about it, right? Is you different types of lasagna, right? But you still have a lot of those components that come out to it.
Love it. For all our propeller spinning friends here and out there, if you haven't heard, it takes seconds to set up a Jump Cloud demo, by the way, and your first 10 users are free. So if you have any curiosity about this, go sign up, play with it, kick the tires. If you want to do it right the first time, call us. We'll help you with that. So I'm going to keep going around my Hollywood Squares. Frank, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just say, as part of that, make sure you have a test group, right? The trials are great because you can test it and you can see what's going to happen and what you're going to break by not knowing what you're doing until you learn it. And then just to make sure you don't lose that productivity we talked about, have that test group, have an initial group of applications or users that maybe is a smaller subset, just so you get your feet wet before you jump in.
Yeah, and ConnectWise, you guys have done a phenomenal job of equipping us as managed service providers and our peers to equip our clients through education. Quite frankly, that's a significant part of obviously what we're doing with this series, and we couldn't have done that without you. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys continue to do with zero trust and helping to model that behavior for us and our clients. Thanks for joining us as always, Frank.
You're welcome.
I'm going to keep going around in this circle here. Jim, I see you. Any final thoughts?
No final comments. I will say one thing. I got to really, if zero trust is kind of an oxymoron, because you got to trust somebody to configure the zero trust. But that's a whole different topic.
Episode 23. Remember that. We're going to come back to that one. Sid.
We used to talk about trusting everyone and giving everyone a chance, but trust is easily lost and extremely hard to get back. And the world's changed, and that's kind of the view I now have. I used to trust everybody first and hope that they had good intentions and good measures. But today we have to view it the opposite way. And the best thing to do is to work with a company like TechOnPurpose and look at what the different factors that we can offer those customers and those partners to make things better and easier. We're trying to make things frictionless because, I understand when I go to the airport, I need to do all these things to be safe. But I also see the frustration. So there's got to be a compromise in some form or factor. Right. And that's what we're trying to do, is just make this easier so we can do what we're supposed to do. Absolutely. But again, thank you for having us. It's great.
Always awesome to have you, Sid. And Lauren, we're going to let you close out after Ryan gives us his final thought.
Yeah, maybe I'll just, Jim, you kind of mentioned this at the friction standpoint. Zero trust scares a lot of people. They're afraid that, well, my people aren't going to be able to do their jobs because you're not trusting anything. And you have to understand that, with I think all of these solutions, we're going to identify those normal and expected behaviors, and those are going to be trusted. So there's a lot of concern about what's going to happen, what's the impact going to be. And the bottom line is it should be very minimal, if any. Maybe there's always a configuration and learning period for sure to get things fine-tuned. But if your people are doing things new that they never did before, shouldn't you know about that anyways? Like, why do they need to download a new application? Game, perhaps, depending how strict you are with your policies. If those things are happening, it's good for somebody to know about that. And if they're just doing what they did yesterday and the day before and the day before that, there is no friction, because those things are going to be allowed. So a lot of people are scared to jump in and take that leap, but just give it a shot, right? And just the airport announcement, these analogies are great. It's the cost you pay to fly, right? I just flew this week, and every time I put my license away because I think I'm done with it, I have to get it out one more time. But you don't even think about it anymore. It's just, you're not going to go past the next step if you don't do it, and so you just do what you have to do. And there's some acclimation from that standpoint to just get used to the procedures. Like somebody mentioned, this is what makes us safe, and we just know we have to do these things. We get used to it. We don't like it at first. We grumble and complain. But then we just do what we have to do and we move on. So give it a try.
And Ryan, you glanced right over this. I'm going to connect some final dots between Frank, something you said, and Ryan said. It's actually part of every single ThreatLocker implementation that there's a learning period. It's a very impressive process that they've built into this thing on the front end, where you're able to deploy their technology and begin to get full-time visibility and visual into every single endpoint, every application, and every process that they're running, so that now you can let that thing run for a few days and you come back together as a group and you assess. All right. So when you do reach that point of friction that we keep talking about, it's well assessed and well documented. And we're really impressed, Ryan, with what you guys do. And thanks for being a partner, man.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've heard you guys say it over and over again in this episode, but a lot of this relies on end user education and implementation. So I wanted to shamelessly plug episode 1 on security awareness training. So check that out on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, LinkedIn, if you haven't already. So if you would like to start a free trial from any of our solution partners, send an email to us at freetrial@who'sinyour.cloud and sign up for our free cybersecurity assessment by visiting who'sinyour.cloud today. Again, last reminder, catch up on all of our episodes of our Who's in Your Cloud series on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify, and get direct delivery straight to your inbox by signing up at techonpurpose.net/blog. Next week, we have a really good episode for you guys on emailing and phishing protection. And as we close out the holiday season, did you know that victims were more susceptible to scams than any other time of the year from attack by malicious actors banking on you to click on fraudulent coupons and deals? Now, we all love a good deal, especially me, but not at the cost of sacrificing cybersecurity. And Matt would kill me if I did that. So learn more on how to protect yourself and business in 2022 in episode 9, being released next Tuesday, January 11th. Sending us off, I'm Lauren Lev, Marketing Manager for TechOnPurpose. We hope all of you enjoyed your holidays, and we are looking forward to a cyber secure new year. That is all from us today. Goodbye, everybody.
Happy New Year, guys.